Welcome to the Be Unfiltered podcast. It's a podcast where we're allowed to just be us. It's unfiltered, unapologetically, and intentionally us while we navigate this thing called life. Prayerfully, through these episodes, you'll find some advice, clarity, courage, wisdom, healing, and inspiration to just be you. So kick off your shoes, get cozy, and stay for a little while. Today's episode is really near and dear to me. I wanted to do another episode for my first episode on the podcast, but after finishing one of me and my daughter's favorite series recently, I changed my mind. I'm still going to do the other episode, but I wanted my first episode to be this episode. The series that I'm talking about is Ginny Georgia on Netflix. It is one of me and my daughter Madison's favorite series on Netflix. And I gotta be honest, if you've never, just to give you a little background, if you've never watched the series before, it's about a mom. Her name is Georgia, and she is a single mother of 2 children, and she is doing the best that she can to provide for her and her 2 children. And on this particular season, it is discovered that Ginny has been self-harming. And I was triggered all throughout the season. Has been times that I have been Ginny. My daughter has been Ginny. And just recently now, my son has been somewhat of a Ginny character. Not that either of my children have self-harmed, but in a sense that during this season, Georgia has been so caught up in her life and trying to maintain and the hustle and bustle of trying to survive that she completely has missed that Ginny has started self-harming. So, and I also, as a mom, I have let my children down at some times where I just miss things. And throughout the season, Georgia is just missing everything that's going wrong with Ginny and the silent things that Ginny's not saying. She's just missing everything. So this season really touched me, so much so that I wanted it to be a part of my first episode on the podcast. It's so important that we hold space for our children. We need to hold space when they are talking, and we need to be able to identify the things that they're not saying. I will start with my background, where I was forgotten in my childhood, and things were happening and traumas were happening to me, and it just was going unnoticed by everybody inside the home and outside the home. Nobody was noticing. Nobody saw these things. And when the things were happening to me outside of the home, I didn't feel safe enough to discuss those things at home because there was already other trauma going on inside of the home. So I didn't feel like it was a safe space for me to share, or I also didn't believe that I would be believed by my parents because of, how I was being treated at home. So I didn't feel safe enough to disclose and share those things with them. Then we fast forward to now, I'm a mom. There were times where I didn't hold space for my daughter, so now I'm taking on the role of like Georgia in the series. I wasn't holding the space for my daughter. I wasn't noticing, the relationship between her and my mom had changed. They were the best of friends. I won't sit here and act like everything was all bad, but I did not notice the signs when things changed between them and their relationship. And nothing, I guess, was clicking to me, because I was so busy in my world and trying to survive as a single mom and take care of my daughter. I wasn't noticing it. And it didn't dawn on me, nothing when red flags didn't go off until it was time to go back to school shopping one school year. And my mom invited herself to go to the store with us, to the mall, to go shopping. And we were in, I want to say it was like a JCPenney store or something like that. And I heard my mom say to my daughter something that immediately triggered me from my childhood. She had either called her fat, or she told her that the clothes made her look fatter or sloppy. And I was like, excuse me, what did you say? And my daughter repeated it. Not only did she repeat it to me, she told me that my mom had been talking to her like that for quite some time. And it immediately triggered me from my childhood because, those are the things that she said to me, talking about my weight, talking about my clothes, talking about my hair as a child. So I was like, no, we don't. I corrected her immediately. You don't talk to her like that. You don't say those things to her like that. You're not allowed to attack her in her self-esteem and lower her confidence. So that was like the major red flag right there. And then at the height of the beginning of the pandemic, me and my children fell into a situation where we had to leave our home, and she's the only place or the only home that we had to go to. I don't know why I thought it was okay to be there. Maybe because she had been acting different and she had been acting nice, and it felt like a safe space to go into until we get there, and then it's a complete opposite. You would have thought that it was okay for me at that time. I was going through the process of finding out that I have an autoimmune disease, and I needed to go to the hospital. Not only go to the hospital, I needed to stay at the hospital. So I'm thinking it's okay for my children to be here. When I get home from the hospital and I'm discharged, I'm out on the patio, and Madison comes outside and sits down with me, and she immediately tells me, or she starts crying. And I said, why are you crying? And she's like, I'm just so happy that you're here. I said, why? What happened? Did something happen while I was gone? And she was just like, yes, Mimi punched me in my face. So, immediately I'm in almost a bit of, I don't want to say a rage, because I just couldn't believe that she would disrespect her in that way. And especially at a time where I am sick. I just got discharged from the hospital. So I immediately go in the house to ask her what happened. And she turns to Madison and says to her, you ain't nothing but a sneaky snake. I knew you couldn't wait to go outside and tell your mother what happened. You could have said it to her right in front of me. Now, this is a grown woman talking to a child, almost making her feel like she shouldn't have said something to me, her mom. So I said, did you or did you not punch her in her face? And she's like, no, if I would have punched her in her face, she would have known that I punched her in her face. And then my daughter's crying. She's saying, no, she punched me in my face. She backed me into a corner and told me, you know what, never mind, you're not even worth the jail charge. And this is my mom doing this to my daughter. So we get into it because at that point I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to fight for my daughter. I need my daughter to know that I'm going to make this right on her behalf. It doesn't happen. My mom goes into her room or whatever, and I believe she starts going to give the baby a bath. And at that point I'm in defense and like, no, I'm ready to snatch my children back. No, I don't need you to give the baby a bath. I don't want you to touch my children. I don't want you to be around my children. And we did get into a verbal altercation because I needed her to know where I was coming from. So now I understand that this is not a safe space, and I have to figure out how we're getting out of here and getting away from you. I don't care if we have to live on the street. The same decision that I had to make as a child, as a teenager. I'd rather live on the street and die on the street before I allow you to abuse me and be able to say I have somewhere to stay. We'll live and die and be homeless on the street first. So we eventually did leave. So that was a time that I missed all the signs, and I made all the wrong decisions. And, it has to do a lot with me working, dealing with my own mental health, dealing with domestic violence in my relationship. And I just was missing all the signs, and I was not there for my daughter. I have to admit that, and I have to hold myself accountable for that. I was not there for her. I did not protect her. I did not do the things that I said I wouldn't do, being what I went through as a child. I said I would protect her from these things. These things would never happen to her. And I allowed those things to happen to her. Not to mention the things that were happening at school, children being encouraged to bully her at school. I'm talking about to the point where she's telling me she has to eat her lunch in a bathroom stall because these children are being encouraged and directed by other people to bully her and do things to her at school. So whereas though now she doesn't even feel safe being at school. So again, another step where I just missed it because I'm so caught up in my own world, being a mom and trying to survive, that I'm missing. I'm not getting it right. I'm completely missing her. I'm not seeing her, and I'm not seeing the things that are being done to her, and then just recently, with my son, my baby boy, Mason, and I missed the signs there. We made a move, and we moved to another state about maybe going on a year and a half, a little over a year and a half, and this is my first time gonna have to trust, daycare in this new place where we're at, and everything's fine. And then maybe towards Christmas or so, he starts coming home with marks and things on his body. And I'm asking the daycare lady, you know, what's happening? What happened? How did this happen or whatever? His clothes are messed up. They're being brand new shoes. There's holes in his brand new shoes. And I'm asking her, and I keep asking her what's going on. And she's like, oh, he's just been outside playing too much. He's just been outside playing too much. Or she'll say something like, oh, I wasn't around when it happened, because she has daycare workers there too. Or I wasn't here when it happened. We fast forward a couple months later. We're into the beginning of last year. And she texts me while I'm at work, and she's just like, we need to talk when you get here. And I'm like, oh my God, did something happen? And I immediately flashed to the night before when I picked him up. When I picked him up, she told me that Mason had to be talked to because he was trying to watch somebody else go to the bathroom. And I was like, well, that's odd, because he doesn't do that. I mean, he comes in the bathroom when I'm in the bathroom because I'm his mom, and that's just how he is. But okay, I'll talk to him about it. But the next day, she's just like, we'll just talk about it when you get here. So when I get there to pick him up, you know, she just pulls me away from her staff. She's like, I need to talk to you in the back room. And she's just like, I think somebody has touched Mason. And I'm like, what do you mean? And where did that come from? And she's just like, it's just the way he's been acting. He's been really interested in seeing other children's private parts and watching them go to the bathroom. And I was just like, I don't know what to say. I go over again with her all the conversations that we've had via phone, text, and in person about the marks, where he's coming home with marks on him while he's coming home from daycare. And she's just like, I don't know, it could have happened here. And I was like, well, it can only happen here because we don't go anywhere. We're not around anybody. It's just me, him, and my daughter. There's just no way. And she's just like, I think you need to take him to the emergency room. So obviously I take him to the emergency room. And the doctors say, well, I don't believe he was touched today or recently, but based on what you've told me and the changes in his behavior, because he had started acting more aggressive, like within like maybe 2 months prior to that, he was very aggressive, trying to fight me, trying to fight his sister, and I couldn't understand where it was coming from. But then it all made sense. You know, the same things that I went through in my childhood, I know what it looks like, and I don't know why I missed it or I couldn't put it together that this had happened to him, and I failed him, and I didn't hold space for him, because I do remember when they came back from Christmas break the beginning of last year, and it was time for them to go back to school and daycare, and I'm dropping him off at daycare. We're waiting for them to open the door, and he immediately starts crying and telling me he doesn't want to be there. And I didn't listen to him. I didn't receive it. I just thought he was being the usual 3-year-old that he is. He's always up under me. He always wants to be with me, always wants to be around me. So I just thought we were having one of those mornings, and I did not hold space for my baby boy. I did not hold space for him. And after, maybe a week or so after, we gone to the hospital in the emergency room. Never mind, that night, she texts me, the daycare provider, the owner, she texts me to see what happened at the emergency room. I tell her what happened, and she immediately jumps on the defense and says, well, I think Mason is going to be a problem, so we'll just make today his last day. As if my 3-year-old had done something wrong. And then about maybe a week or two afterwards, when you go to the emergency room to discuss something like that about a child, they immediately inform the police and CPS. So they make a visit to our home just to make sure everything's okay and to understand what happens. And then I'm going over with them like everything that had been discussed with the daycare owner prior, with all the incidents of him coming home, and showing them the text messages and conversations between me and her. And they were just like, well, yeah. I think we need to go there and get her side and see what's going on there. But we see your texts. We see that something has been going on. So it's just another time where I didn't hold space for my children. And I decided to do this episode because it is just so important to hold space for our children. We need to listen. Not only listen, like effectively listen. No cell phones, no distractions, just be there, be present, hold space for them. Don't judge them. hear what they're saying, hear and see the things that they're not saying. If they're withdrawing in any way from you or other people and isolating, if they're being more aggressive and wanting to fight more, noticing the changes in their behavior and how they're acting and communicating with you and others is so important. It's so important, because I truly believe at-risk children and unprotected children become at-risk teen and unprotected teens, and so on through their adult life, and things just keep happening until, you decide, hey, something is wrong. Something needs to be done, whether it's therapy, so that we're no longer at risk and we feel protected. Same thing happened at my daughter's school recently. I'm noticing the same bullying going on and the children isolating her to make her feel like she shouldn't be a part of anything, or the girls intentionally going into the bathroom before her and removing all the toilet paper so she doesn't have toilet paper to use, and intentionally doing stuff to her food at school and her lunchbox so she can't eat, or doing things to her food. It just doesn't stop. But because these things have happened, I am more aware now. I check in daily. I have removed her from the school so she doesn't go to that school anymore. And it does often sometimes make you want to just hold your children so close and don't go anywhere and don't let them out into the world because of the craziness in this world. But it starts, so that it doesn't get to this point, it starts with you holding space for your children. Knowing them, knowing their behaviors, knowing their patterns, listening to them, being able to identify the things that they're not saying. It is so important. Hold space for your children. Protect your children. Take care of your children. Have conversations with them often. If you're dealing with a teenager like myself, they don't want you all in their business, but I still check in with her often. Is there anything you need to talk about? Anything we need to talk about? Anything that I can be doing better? Any place that I can be showing up for you more? Do you just need to vent and you don't want me to say anything? It's so important. So important. So I'm going to close this episode. I love you guys, and I will be back next week with next week's episode. Don't forget to sit down and have conversation with your children. Candid, no judgment. They don't have to worry about you telling nobody else their business. Just hold space for them. I love you guys.